Hello, my name is Nemo Martin. My pronouns are they, them. I am a PhD student at Royal Holloway, and the following is an extract of my thesis. So this is going to be completely different to other things that we've listened to so far. Content warnings for mentions of racism and the repeated use of an antiquated term. Anyone who knows me will not be surprised when I say that I'm going to spend the next 10-ish minutes talking about Les Misérables, namely the BBC's 6-episode miniseries that was aired in 2018 to 2019. I'm going to talk about it because it forms a case study in transphobia and racism in the BBC's scripted dramas. Not only do we understand that the BBC's so-called impartiality affects news coverage and personnel, we must not overlook who works on the shows aired to millions of people internationally every day. If you've watched the BBC's Les Mis, you will have noticed that it employs, scare quotes, colourblind casting. Seemingly representative until you notice that, of course, every dark-skinned person in the show is an antagonist or a servant. Mixed-race people are ordered in attractiveness based on their proximity to whiteness, and no person of colour except the brown man who becomes a slave trader survives the last episode. Les Misérables is about the miserable, it's about death and trauma, but as with every other adaptation, Cosette and Marius, the beautiful couple who survive, are both, somehow, despite colourblind casting, white, cis, and straight. I doubt very many people will have noticed the transgender person in the show, but I think this blink and you miss it instance says quite a lot about the institution of the BBC and how ingrained transphobia is within it. At one point in the show, a young protagonist, Marius, is brought to La Chaumière, the Oriental-influenced club, where Marius is poached by exotic women. Screenwriter Andrew Davies describes La Chaumière as follows: people are dancing, some quite normally, but one or two couples are indulging in shameless frottage. There are several transvestites, but we don't see this immediately. And now we can fully register the louche dancing styles and the same-sex couples, and also see pickpockets at work. Cut to Marius's shocked gaze. The scene is written to have a dawning horror to it. At first, we are greeted by normal couples dancing as they might in a club. But then we, like Marius, are blindsided by the sudden appearance of inappropriate sexuality. Davies uses the word normal to set the scene of heterosexual clubbing so that we experience shock at seeing a transvestite. These transvestites are not performing any action in the script, are simply placed as objects of visual horror to be noticed. By interspersing queer people among these pickpockets and menacing heavies holding knives, Davies is creating a space in which queerness is conflated with criminality and moral destitution. While the transvestites and other queers can be ogled at with long, fetishizingly slow shots, the club is a visual threat to Marius and, by proxy, the writer with the same identity's safety. I reference here the shooting script, the final draft of a script as used on set, published on the BBC's online script archive. Scripts typically go through multiple revisions before this, with script editors clearing the final draft for production. It's almost incredible that this description made it through not only the first draft of a primetime BBC drama, but to the shooting script without being questioned for its language use or its implications. That neither Davies nor any editor nor consultant at the BBC considered interrogating the use of this term in the script fits with the institution-wide transphobia prevalent to the BBC we are here today to discuss. While some people do, of course, self-describe as transvestite, and it may be argued that this language could be blamed on the historical setting, the term transvestite is alleged to have been coined in the 1910s, and as such, the use of it would be considered both anachronistic for the 19th century French time period, as well as being widely considered derogatory in the present, especially when used by people who are not trans themselves. While the production contains no filmed use of slurs, they are hidden in the script. Davies' writing containing the use of transphobic word and homophobic implications does not seem particularly impartial. It is likely these scripts were never expected to be read by anyone outside of the production, and so were not consulted on. While on-screen representation through casting of non-normative actors may be one sign of progress, moments like this can exemplify how true diversity cannot be achieved without education through all departments, including at least one script supervisor with trans awareness training. I truly believe that Les Mis works as an excellent example of how radically out of touch the BBC's producers are. Potentially the most well-known aspect of Les Misérables is the barricades, the revolt that the people of Paris mount because of their anger at income inequality. Again, this production was colourblind casting, and yet somehow our barricade boys are a group of cisgender, middle-class, straight, majority white boys whose goal is not community progress but individual valour. What the characters of BBC Les Mis fight for is not communal freedom or justice, but individual valour and the right of white, cisgender, heterosexual, middle-class people to exist in peace, particularly abhorrent when we consider protest has most often been led by the black, majority queer, majority female leaders throughout our most recent contemporary civil rights protests. How, I ask, can the UK's impartial production company pretend that they were not aware of the implications or the wording or the derogatory treatment of trans and people of colour in their primetime TV show from only 2 years ago? It is a useful indicator of how, even outside of the writer and director, racism and transphobia is perpetuated by creative teams who are undereducated about histories and stereotypes. This is an institutional problem. It cannot be fixed by shoving trans talent on camera or with ill-thought-out blind casting practices. It cannot be fixed with a one-off production or a panel discussion. At all levels of the BBC, there must be consistent and thorough change, and it must be lasting, and it must start now. Thank you.